Good morning. Last night I sat up thinking about these protests and the Black Lives Matter movement and what is the true meaning of Black Lives Matter in the context of police injustice. And I had a very, very disheartening thought about the 3 million Black men missing from the workforce, missing from their children, missing and absent from their mothers. With no type of press, with no protest, to reintegrate these people with their families and their kids. We talk about absentee fathers in the Black community, but there are 3 million missing Black men. Of course, we are 20 million in the US, I believe, 20, 30 million in the US. 10% of our Black men are missing. Of course, we're going to have children that grow up without a father. Of course, we're going to have children with no guidance. Because there are 3 million missing Black men. So when a mother is on food stamps, or a mother is on welfare, or a mother is standing in the WIC line, because there's a missing father, who do we blame? The missing father or the people who kidnapped the father? So why aren't we talking about these 3 million missing Black men? Because it's not press friendly. Rioting against the police has become press friendly. The US is so fed up with the police force, Black and white, that they're willing to work together, that we're willing to work together and riot and for the sake of police injustice. But only when it's press friendly. Only when it gets views. Because as soon as the cop shoots someone who was a 3-time felon, the press will say, cop shot some guy, he was running away, but the guy was a pretty bad guy because he was a 3-time felon. That's unsexy. And Black, white, yellow, green, everyone has that same bias. What that means, that 3-time felon, means that on 3 different occasions, this man was kidnapped. Think about it. The British went to Africa. The Europeans went to Africa and they kidnapped Africans and made them slaves so they can work. That's it. That's all. The Africans didn't do anything. Our ancestors didn't do a thing. They didn't commit crimes. The only crime was black. The only crime was possibly losing a tribal war between whatever tribe that they were fighting against. It had been sold to Europeans or traded to Europeans. And the Europeans took these Africans to foreign lands, emasculated them, emasculated the men, and made them work for free. Made their kids work for free for hundreds of years. The only purpose of the transatlantic slave trade was free labor. That's it. That's all. Now, we have laws in the United States. We have laws in the United States that is fulfilling the same purpose on the back of black men. On the back of black men. And in fact, I use the term men loosely. On the back of black bodies. From 13, 11, 10, man, woman, child. With mostly the same purpose. Labor. The for-profit prison industry is real. It's a big industry. Black bodies walk in, paychecks go to the white owners. How is that possible? Why isn't Black Lives Matter protesting and tearing down these state prisons that is locking up black bodies for the pettiest of crimes? For crimes that's not even crimes anymore. Do you know how many black men and black women are in prison for crimes in the 60s or 70s? Or that in the decision was based on race and prejudice. And the jury brought back guilty verdicts based on race and on prejudice and assumptions. Do you know how many black men were released from prison after spending 20, 30, 40 years in prison? Because DNA evidence proved that they were innocent. Yes, there's projects working on freeing presumed innocents. And the rules are, this evidence existed then, you cannot reintroduce it. There's so many people in prison right now that is innocent, has known innocence. But the way that the laws are written, the evidence that proves that they're innocent cannot be introduced into the court as evidence because the evidence are too old, or the chain of command was broken, or the chain of possession was broken, or the evidence was available and presented at courts early on, but an argument wasn't presented because it's not technically new evidence. but there's a new story behind the evidence. Or the original accuser say she's lied, but it's invalid now. The original accuser may have lied, or he or she may have been coerced, and 15, 20 years later admit that they were coerced, and it's invalid. It's not enough evidence to overthrow a conviction. These are not people committing egregious crimes. And in fact, the most egregious crime since the enslavement of Africans has been the kidnapping of black bodies in America. But no one talks about it. It's not sexy, right? The world says, oh, everyone's in prison is a criminal. And even when we talk about police reform, what are we truly talking about? Firing a few cops? No. The police sit on a pyramid. They have a place inside a pyramid. Every rule, everything the police forces do, everything is backed by laws and regulations. Their job is no longer to protect. Their job is to arrest. The DA's job is to convict, and is to argue a conviction. The judge and the jury is to convict. The prison system there is to house them for as long as the government is paying their daily hotel fee. That's it. That's all the prison system is a shitty hotel. And black bodies are forced to stay there for the sake of the hotel owner. So when are we going to start talking about how to dismantle this system that has been housing 3,000 black men? How are we going to do this? What are we going to do about that? When we know the policing in minority community and black and brown communities are at the least unfair, but most likely it's criminal. We know that black and brown people are getting 2 to 3 times stiffer sentences than their white counterparts. We know that crimes that's common in black communities are stiffer than crimes that are common in white communities, such as the crime of carrying an ounce of crack versus the crime of carrying an ounce of cocaine. One is crack that can land you a life in prison, and the other one is cocaine that maybe land you a few years at most. We know this. We know that the police unfairly patrol black communities and therefore convict and find more crime in black communities. We know this. We know that the police is target black men and women unfairly, just standing around. We know the effects of stop and frisk. We know what was happening in the 60s and 70s. We know the mass incarceration. I remember the Chicago paddy wagons that was designed to round up large groups of black men and put them in Cook County Jail. So we've known about this for decades, but no one talks about it because it's not sexy. What has to happen before the 3 million missing black men get enough attention that true justice reform is on the table. Because we know, there's a few 100,000 black men in prison for petty marijuana crimes in states that now have legal marijuana. When do we talk about this? We know there are black men in jail for child support. But the child support payments was because the child support payments were due when they were in jail. You take a black man away from his family, put him in prison for 5 years without the ability to work. Then when he's free, he owes 5 years of back child support payments. Stops him from getting his license, stops him from getting jobs that requires any type of license, security jobs, a lot of type of degree-based license, a psych license. Some states ban like all licensing with child support. This is an issue that no one talks about. So I decided to talk about it. So when we discuss Black Lives Matter, ask them, do they really matter though? Because we go to bat for George Floyd. But there are 3 million people just like George Floyd. There's 3 million families that's missing their babies. There's millions of children that's missing their fathers. When we talk about deadbeat dads, we must address the kidnapping that's happening in black communities. And if we cannot seriously put this issue out front, then I will argue that Black Lives Matter only to the people who truly care about those 3 million missing black men. Because as we protest daily, for these egregious murders by police officers, we need to put prisoners at the front of our mind, because they're alive and they can be released. We would not bring back George Floyd. We can't bring back Sandra Bland. But we can bring home some of those millions of black men that are missing, kidnapped by the United States justice system. That's my perspective. See you next time.